This week, the name on the marquee, I guess, has got to be Nassourdine Imavov, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, at UFC Fight Night, Dolidze versus Imavov, defeated the Georgian Roman Dolidze by a majority decision. The scorecards read 47-47 even, and the other two judges gave it to Imavov, 49-44 and a 48-46 mark. Give us your thoughts. First, it was a closely contested battle between these two big boys. What are your thoughts? Do you think the rightful man won the fight, and your thoughts on the fight overall?
Oh, I don't think there was any question whatsoever as to who won the fight. I thought it was pretty dominant. Going into it last week, I thought the technique of Nassourdine Imavov would carry the day. But man, I think that may have even surpassed my expectations. Like, Roman Dolidze had nothing for him. I'm not sure even what his plan was going into that fight, other than to try to hold Imavov against the cage. It didn't seem like he had any other thought until he finally threw caution to the wind a bit late after he got caught with that illegal kick. But I mean, this thing was all Imavov. He was really damn close to the finish in round one, but Dolidze is a tough motherfucker. You got to give him that. That combo that Imavov dropped him with was so filthy. Landed the right straight, then a left knee to the body, and the two hard follow-up left hands to drop him. And he really tried to pour it on. He said after the fight that it drained him a bit, the way he pushed for that finish, and you could tell. But even still, he pieced Dolidze up all fight long. He landed a lot of shots that I think would have hurt most guys more than they were hurting Roman, because Roman is just kind of like a block of stone in there.
Yeah.
But Lorisenko said it best, I thought. She said at one point, if you're going to fight the style of fight where you're just in the center staring at each other, the guy with the speed and the technique on his side is always going to win. And that's what we saw. Dolidze, other than when he would try to press him against the cage, didn't really bring anything else. Like I said, until finally late when he tried to disrupt the rhythm and really turn it into a brawl, which he should have done a lot sooner. But for the most part, Imavov just showed himself to be at a different level. I thought it was a clear win for him and a statement win. And frankly, I didn't think it was a great showing from Roman Dolidze.
Omar, bringing you in here, what are your thoughts of the performances of both of these middleweights and your thoughts on the result and the scores?
Yeah, I actually thought Roman Dolidze didn't look great at all. I thought from jump. He seemed really tentative. He didn't really seem like he had that forward pressure that I feel like he's known for. There were moments where he was standing completely still, which I feel like is very not him. So he was a little out of character, I felt like, throughout that entire fight. And I thought Imavov did what he is normally doing. I think there were frustrating moments in the fight, especially during, clinching exchanges. There were a lot of striking exchanges that led directly into the clinch, and it's just, there was a lot of mess in that fight as a result of it, I thought. And I thought I give Dolidze credit because I thought he lost that first round pretty handedly, and then he tried to come back a little bit in the second round. I thought he kind of won that second round, but after that, I think it just really went downhill for Dolidze. He got beat on quite a bit in the first round, and although he came back in the second round, I thought it just got worse for him as the rounds progressed. 4 was obviously a mess because of that head kick with the hand down, which is another example as to why we need to get rid of that rule completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, by the end of that fight, there was no question to me that Imavov had won that fight, and won it handily from what I felt.
Yeah, I meant to say there's no way you could justify scoring that a draw, because even if you gave round 2 to Dolidze, and then you ended up giving him round 4 as a 10-8 because you had him winning that round plus the deducted point, Imavov still won 3 and 5 and should have had a 10-8 in round 1. So either way, Imavov still wins that fight. The dude that scored it a draw didn't give Imavov a 10-8 in round 1, which is absolute bullshit in my opinion.
Well, Sal D'Amato didn't give him a 10-8 in round 1 either, but he also didn't score any other round for Dolidze.
Yeah, I don't know how you say that round 1 is not a 10-8. I really don't.
It was
and
a bad
it's interesting
round.
how right on the heels of the news of which commission is going to look to change the
California.
the down
Yeah.
California.
California. It's Andy Foster that's heading that.
That's right.
little thing up.
What is it? It has to be weeks after that announcement, and then we see a perfect example of why that rule change should be changing in this fight right here, because Dolidze had a few fingers down.
Yeah, and
Might
then
not have even been 5.
Imavov had like 4 more chances after that where he could have done the same shit. Like it kept presenting himself, and you saw him like freeze and be like, "Nope, can't do that," and like throw a punch instead. But he, like, if that was legal, he could have blasted him that way a bunch of times.
And see, like it's situations like that where if you don't want to get blasted in the face, then you should be forced to put a knee on the floor. Then you know what I mean. Like you have to give up your base, and you can't be
like pull guard.
You can't stall the fight with it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely needs to get changed. And even when it does get changed, I think there will be sort of an adjustment period for all of us, because there's going to be a few finishes that were like, whoa, like a year ago that would have been very illegal.
Yeah.
And now it's fine. Like I think of the Mighty Mouse versus Moraes 2, where he got finished with the knee on the ground.
Yeah.
It was nasty.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's resume.
Yeah, and that felt weird for all of us.
It did, because we're all mostly watching, UFC, and we see this one with the different rule set here. Okay, let's talk about the winner here, Nassourdine Imavov, the Parisian. Where does he go from here? Picking up another nice win in the middleweight division, Mark.
So as good as he looked here, and he did, like this was the win that I feel like he needed to justify the way that he gets talked about. Like I feel like people talk about and rank Imavov as if he already had a performance like this, and to me, he had not. So I feel like now finally the way he's talked about and the number next to his name are justified coming out of this. So to me, he needed this one, but as good as he looked, I think he's still kind of like a full rung below everyone who's above him right now. Like I think the UFC has him at 8. You go one spot above him, we're into like Brendan Allen and Vettori and Cannonier and Costa. And I just feel like all those guys are, as I said, like a rung above. They've all proven more. So I'm going to say he needs to get the loser of one of those fights that are happening above him. So I'll say either the loser of Allen Vettori or the loser of Whitaker Costa would make sense for Imavov.
Omar, any other thoughts?
That's literally the picks I had. So there's that.
I love it.
Same page.
Yep.
Okay, Mark, going back to you now for what to do next with Roman Dolidze. He didn't look great in this win. He made me look bad with my pick, but that's for another conversation. What are your thoughts?
So he still is at number 10 in the UFC rankings. I'm actually curious where he's at in mine because I don't think he's on my fallers. I don't think he fell enough for that, but let's see. Yeah, he's 11 in mine. But I'm going to bet that he fights a non-ranked fighter in his next fight. I just don't think the UFC will have liked what they saw from him on Saturday. So I think we're going to see at least a little bit of a step down. So I'm going to say it's someone who's kind of just outside that area, and I will go with one of either Andre Muniz or Ikram Aliskerov.
Ooh. Omar, any other ideas?
I'm kind of in the same vein as far as making him a rung on the ladder right now for somebody else. And I think the winner of Fluffy Hernandez and Roman Kopylov would be a fantastic person to be climbing up that ladder.
Yeah, it's going as well.
Okay, let's move on here further down the line of this UFC fight night. Let me pull it back up here. Okay, in the co-main event of UFC Fight Night at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, in the lightweight division, Renato Moicano gets a rather dominant win over Drew Dober. The scorecards read 29-28 on all three judges' results. Omar, starting with you this time, what were your thoughts on the performance from Moicano?
This was heartbreaking as a Drew Dober fan. It was a performance where I felt like you could see that Drew Dober could have done very well and was doing very well on the feet. But the grappling from Moicano was next level. Mark had pointed out last week, and I pointed out that Drew Dober doesn't have very many submission losses on his record, and only the best of the best have really been able to get over on him on the ground. And Moicano was definitely up there, and he showed it. His grappling, I thought, was on point, and I thought his entries and the timing in his entries to get those takedowns, I thought was really, really good. You don't really get to see a ton of jiu-jitsu guys that have a good takedown game. A lot of times they rely on guys doing something dumb to either get them on the ground or, to pull some kind of guard or just sort of react to what somebody else is doing as opposed to going for their own takedowns. That was one of the things that made Damian Maia so big as far as that part was concerned, was because he got very good at getting takedowns and using his ground game to stop guys. And Moicano had that ability here. He was able to take the back a lot of the time standing and then drag down Dober out right onto the ground and end up in side control almost immediately. His position game, I thought, was fantastic, and he never really let up. Rounds 2 and 3 were really difficult when it came to that part. And it was really, like I said, as a Drew Dober fan, very difficult to watch, but a very, very good win from Moicano. I did not see the post-fight interview, but I hear it was an entirely like its own event almost.
It was a journey.
Yeah. So I'm sure Mark will have something to say about that. But as far as the fight was concerned, I thought it was a great fight.
It's hard to remember everything he fucking said.
Yeah.
Mark, your thoughts on the fight on Moicano's nice win?
Yeah, I mean, it took Moicano all of about 1 minute to decide that he wanted to be a wrestler in this fight. So that shows you
100%.
how hard Drew Dober hits. But I got to say, I was really impressed with the takedowns of Moicano. I never anticipated that he could take Dober down with the ease that he did. And I think that says a lot about his ability to compete with top guys in this division. If we assume he may be able to get them down the same way, going into this, I don't know that I valued his takedown ability as much as he showed in this fight. And then I see a lot of casuals on Twitter and elsewhere coming into this fight with coming out of this fight, with the narrative of like, oh, he got rewarded for laying on him. Like, no, he did not. He had plenty of activity. In round 1, he bloodied Drew Dober's face. I looked up the stats after I saw people saying this. He outstruck Dober in round 1, 43-7. In round 2, he outstruck him 34-17, which is the round he lost just because of the damage, even though it was absolutely from a clash of heads, which I guess, no one's really talking about. And then round 3, he outstruck him 65-12. So outstriking a man by 100+ significant strikes is not laying on him doing nothing. So I'm kind of frustrated that seems to be a lot of people's narrative coming out of this fight, because I thought he fought a great fight. He did exactly what he needed to do, and him having skills that allow him to avoid a slugfest with Drew Dober is a credit to him. It's not a discredit to him. So I thought he fought a great fight, and Dober battled. He hung tough on the ground. He cracked Moicano standing any chance that he could, but he just got outworked. And like Omar said, Moicano's grappling is just super high level, and he was floating in there, and Dober had a hard time getting free. So good fight. I didn't think Dober looked bad in the loss, but I thought it was a solid win for Renato Moicano, especially off the layoff that he was coming back from.
Yeah, I thought Moicano, he showed a real just a determination to win and to get the fight where it would be most advantageous for him and the safest for him. I felt like, especially in the second and third rounds, anytime Dober started to land or even looked like he stung Moicano a few times, Moicano almost immediately was like, yep, we're going to change course. And I thought he did show very good fight IQ. He wasn't stubborn in there, and he knew who he was in there with, and he did what he needed to do to get the win. And then we got treated to another Moicano moments on the microphone. I think Moicano was starting to become aware of himself on the microphone, so this one felt a little more almost forced, just kind of like he knows it's a thing, so he's kind of trying to lean into it. That first one, though, man, that first one a few months ago was just gold.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if they fine these dudes for cursing on ESPN, because I know they're told not to. And Moicano is like tripling and quadrupling down on it half the time when he's doing these post-fight interviews. So I don't know.
He's
It's
like,
true.
don't curse. Let me scream curse into the microphone. Let's
I
fucking
liked what you
go.
said about. I liked what you said about the fight IQ though, because obviously we've seen him making a lot of strides in his striking. We were just talking last week about how he outstruck Brad Riddell before he tapped him out one fight ago. And a lot of times when you see guys make strides like that and then end up in a fight with someone like a Drew Dober who's hitting them hard, they're stuck in like, nah, like I'm here. I've made these improvements. I can hang with Drew Dober. Like I'm going to figure this out. And he was like, you know what? This is not the fight that I need to do this. And I
Yeah.
think that you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, and I think his length also helped him with the wrestling too. It seemed to be difficult for Drew Dober to get out of his grasp at certain times. And I think that was sort of the disparity in their attributes in that sense. So
Agree.
I think you also know too, like when you're standing in front of a dude and he's throwing at you, I think you know, at least I can tell you that when I'm holding pads for somebody and they're throwing power, like you know how many of those you can probably take. You know what I mean? Even if that number is one, you kind of do, man.
Know against Khalil? Like,
I mean,
I feel like too often we see fighters just be stubborn. Like, nah, I'm going to turn this around.
But that's true though. But that's actively that's actively avoiding it, right? It's not acknowledging what's there, but you know, like you can feel it, you can sense it. You know what I mean? You can. There's something about the force and the way that people throw things sometimes, and you can see it and feel it. That, like you know, especially when you get hit with one of them, you're like, I don't know if I could take more of that. That might be maybe one more, and I might be done after that. You know what I mean? Like there's a limit. I think you could feel it, and so I think for Moicano, you could see the way Drew Dober hits, and I don't even blame Moicano for being like, "Fuck that, not doing that, take him down." Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if it's fight IQ or if it's just instinct.
It might be a little of both because we've seen Moicano do the opposite and hang in there trying to tough guy it, and he's gotten his ass whooped.
So. But that was also a great comparison, Mark, with the Anthony Smith versus Roundtree.
Yeah,
because with a guy like Anthony
Smith versus a lot of dudes,
Smith has such a good ground game. Like he's so well versed on the mat. You'd think, let's change this up. Just kind of stand at range with a Muay Thai fighter. Anyway, let's talk about Renato Money Moicano, where he can go from here at 155 pounds. Omar, give us the name who you would love to see Moicano match up with next.
I don't know. When did Fiziev blow out his knee? Because I feel like it's been a little bit now, but I can't remember. I would love to see that fight though. I don't know what the timeline is for Rafael Fiziev at this point. September, February. I mean, it's possible to get it done in the summer, I would imagine, depending on how Fiziev is feeling. So I'll stick with Fiziev. I think that would be a good fight back for Fiziev to have.
Sorry, I got a message from work, so I got sidetracked for a second. When did you say Fiziev is supposed to be back?
I don't know. I'm trying to ballpark it here. He got injured in September, and we're in February. I figure Moicano's probably not going to fight for another couple months, 3 months, maybe the summer.
I feel like that's like a year-long injury, no? Maybe not.
I don't know. I don't know how bad it was. Not great, obviously, but...
Dude, people are so fucking stupid. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. I'm back.
Mark. The UFC now has Renato Moicano ranked 13th. You don't have to spoil where he has risen to in your rankings if you want to. You can, obviously, but what would you do next with him?
He's not one of my risers. He's just in the same spot that he was in.
Okay.
Which is 10.
Okay.
So
and what would you do with the next? Are we how far up into the top 10 are we matching him with now?
So he's asking for Beneil Dariush, and I honestly think that's a perfect fight. You know, lightweight is always kind of messy. There's a lot going on. Dariush is free. He's the type of step up that satisfies what Moicano deserves at this point. And Dariush needs a big win himself to kind of bounce back into the mix. So I think it works for both of them. I booked that.
Okay. And now let's talk about the loser, my man Drew Dober. Mark, staying with you here, what would you do next with Dober?
I'm going to say Paddy Pimblett. I really think it's the fight to make. I wanted Bobby Green for Paddy, if you remember. I was talking about that on this show, who is like at a almost identical level to where Drew Dober is at, I would say. But a little less of a power threat, which is why I was like, all right, we'll go the Bobby route to run a little less risk of someone just flatlining Paddy. But Bobby got booked. He's on UFC 300 against Jim Miller. And I guess if he wins that fight, the Paddy fight still works, but that's a while away. And I don't know if Paddy wants to wait that long to get a fight booked. So if not, I say, fuck it. I'll get on the Drew Dober train. Let's just roll the dice and put him in there and see if he could do the dance with Drew Dober.
That is a big test for Paddy Pimblett, man. Omar, what do you say?
I love it. I love that pick. I actually really love the Paddy Pimblett fight, especially after this fight with Moicano kind of showing the potential takedown vulnerability of Drew Dober, which he hadn't really shown before. And if there's one thing Paddy Pimblett is good at, it is the ground game. So I do not expect Paddy Pimblett to stand like at all with Drew Dober. But if there is a place to exploit with that takedown, especially those drag down takedowns, it's a very big possibility that Paddy Pimblett could exploit that. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's not as much of a bulldozer type fight for Drew Dober as one might imagine.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's move on now to the welterweight matchup that went down this past Saturday night on the main card of UFC Fight Night, Dolidze versus Imavov. Once again, it went down at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. In the welterweight division, Randy Brown flatlines Muslim Salikhov in the very first round. The knockout came at 3:17 of round one. Mark, give us your thoughts of how the 3 minutes of this fight played out and how the end came.
I'll tell you what, Muslim Salikhov did come out with the one game plan that I was afraid of, which was to rip Randy's lead leg. Rip Randy's lead leg. Tough one to say.
Very good. You did it.
And it was working for a little minute there, but no matter how much he ripped that leg, he was still going to be stuck at a massive reach disadvantage for as long as that fight lasted. And for a striker as smooth as Randy with an educated jab like the one he has, it was just an enormous advantage for him in there. And it got him a finish. He threw the jab out. Salikhov had to lean way back, kind of off balance, lean back to avoid it because he wasn't expecting to be in range of it just yet. Randy did a great job to follow up with a second jab after Salikhov leaned back, which kind of really made Salikhov have to freeze in place there. And then he just cracked him with that big right hand coming through. So that's what a reach and a good jab will do for you. And man, did it pay off because Salikhov went right down. I don't even know that Randy needed that follow-up shot. You could tell he didn't really think he needed it, but he was like, fuck it, we'll do one. And that's a big win for Randy. You know, he's always like right there in terms of potentially getting his shot against a ranked fighter. And I think a first round finish in that spot may have finally gotten that done for him.
Yeah, man. Omar, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love good fundamentals, and that's really what this was. And you could see Randy trying to set him up for a good minute before that happened. He was throwing his jab out a lot, trying to get good reads, and you could see. And I even think at one point he jawed at his corner that he sees it, he knew, he could see what they were trying to tell him to do. Yep. And you could see he was trying to work that jab. He was trying to work an angle, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful double jab right cross. I mean, there's literally, it's like one of the first combinations you learn when you learn how to strike. And it was beautifully executed, man. There's not really much you can say other than just to admire how well it was done.
Yeah, man. There isn't much to say because there wasn't much fight. So let's keep this one moving. And Omar, give me the name of the guy who you would want Randy Brown to fight next at welterweight.
Welterweight is kind of a wild place right now, especially with all the names and all the people that are on the come up. And I just don't know if Randy Brown, like, I look at who's 15 in the welterweight division, and like Fakhretdinov versus Randy Brown is just not the fight I want to see right now. But Michael Chiesa versus Randy Brown is seemingly the fight I want to see right now. So that might be the one I think I'm going to go with.
I was thinking that myself. Mark?
Yeah, so was Randy. I don't know if you guys heard, but that's the same fight he asked for. So two guys that
Hilarious.
are Moicano did the job for me, and so did Randy because I'm with it. You know, he's long overdue for another shot at a ranked fighter. Chiesa's on a slide. He needs to defend his spot. You know, I think it's an intriguing matchup between the two of them, and apparently they're down for it. So I say book it.
Anything you guys want to
Love it.
add about Muslim Salikhov and his potential next opponent at welterweight?
I'm going to go Nico Price. Two veterans, both need a W, and I think that's actually a fun scrap.
Love Nico Price always. Omar, your thoughts?
I don't hate that. What where do you have Salikhov in your realm of folks?
Salikhov. Oh, that's not his weight class, so that's why I can't find him. Please hold. He is 35. And for reference, Nico's 31 in the fight that I just made.
Why don't we give old boy one of the Bond themes? Which was the Bond theme that just got?
Bro, that's the other fight I almost said. I was debating giving him a nice veteran fight or making him fight a young killer, and I almost went with Gabriel Bonfim.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Gabriel Bonfim on there. Yeah.
Like it.
Okay. Let us keep moving along to the women's flyweight fight that went down between Natalia Silva and Viviane Araujo. And Natalia Silva came away with a W in this one. The result was a unanimous decision for Silva. All three judges scored it the same way, 29-28. Mark, let me start with you again. What were your thoughts of Silva getting it done?
So early in round one, even though Araujo wasn't doing anything other than holding her, really, you got a little bit of that, like, man, is Silva not going to look as good here, as free as we've been seeing her? You know, does this step up kind of maybe dial her back a little bit? But then by round two, we were right back to what we're used to seeing. Silva just super mobile, side to side, cutting angles, stupid fast. And Viviane was mostly just flat-footed and like trying to follow her, really. She still found a moment or two where she got it into the clinch, but she couldn't really score more once there. It was really just her trying to hold Silva. And whenever they separated, it was the Natalia Silva show. So, I mean, the girl gets off two shots quicker than Viviane was getting off one some of the time. And there's so much torque on her shots, too. My God. So, yeah, she was great. It's honestly a bit hard for me to gauge how this striking will look when it's against fellow elite strikers, because we haven't really seen her against anyone who would fit that bill as of yet. I mean, I guess Andrea Lee is a pretty solid striker, and she did clown Andrea Lee. So, yeah, I mean, the sky is the limit for Natalia Silva. Requesting the crowd to sing you happy birthday may have been a bit much. That wasn't my personal favorite move, but everything else was great from her.
Omar, your thoughts on the fight?
I mean, how do you not love watching Natalia Silva?
Man.
There were two shots specifically that like I fell in love with, and it was her jumping back side kick, and she cracked Araujo twice with that, right in the middle of her chest as she was coming in, and it was, I mean, it's some shit out of a movie. Like, people don't use that. It's just not, you don't see it, and when you actually see somebody use it and use it effectively, it's always fun to watch. But Silva's ability to get her shots off, and you know, we've talked about people having hesitation in their shots or not committing fully. You know what I mean? Natalia Silva, I don't think has ever had that problem. Natalia Silva, she's throwing a shot. She's throwing it with everything she's got, and she's throwing it accurately. And her switch kick is disgusting, especially the fact that it goes up high. She's not even trying to throw it to the body. She's trying to throw it at your noggin the entire time. She's got the fastest hands right now that I've seen in that division. And they're effective too. It's not even just like she's flailing them out there. There are real combinations that are going on in her hands.
Yeah, dude, she's so good.
And she's really good. She's really, really good. She puts things together really well. She is very mobile. I think the thing that I like about her is she's mobile when she needs to be, but she will plant her feet and she will scrap and exchange if she needs to, but she doesn't get caught in it. And I think that that's what's really made her successful, is that it's allowed her to kind of put her game plan into play, make sure she doesn't get bullied in the moments where they try to bully her, and then she can continue to kind of put on her bike and still do what she needs to do. I'm a big fan of hers as of right now. I mean, she's been really impressive, I think, in every fight that I've seen her in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that she keeps going. There's a few girls up the ladder at this point that she needs to beat before she, I think, can get some gold. But looking at the list of women that are in front of her, these for me are all women that are totally beatable to her or for her. I think she can win a lot of these fights. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, it's women like Natalia Silva who make me extra mad at the dumb takes we see of people being upset that there are women's fights on UFC 300.
Bro, I feel like it's more and more lately that people are like, "Oh, there's 2 women fights on this card." Like, what? When did this? I thought we were past this bullshit.
Yeah, man. It's like, do you
I
know
don't
how
know.
good Natalia Silva is? Have you heard
My
of
thing is,
Valentina
there's
Shevchenko?
Yeah.
are there women that when we see them fight are not the most enjoyable? Absolutely. Are there men when we see them fight that they're not the most enjoyable? Absolutely.
I
Frankly,
mean,
the first fight on this
people we
card
talked about
between
so
Pogas
far.
and
Yeah.
I mean, there's fights that you're going to see guys that are just they're good fighters, but they're not always the most exciting, and they're not really ones that at the end of the day we always care about. And that's going to happen with women, and that's going to happen with men. But it doesn't mean that when a woman fight goes on, you're like, well, that's going to automatically be shit, because that is far from the truth.
Of the fights we've talked about on this episode so far, Silva was probably the most entertaining fighter.
Yep. It was a great fight.
Okay. Well, with that being said, let's go into our lightning round.
Well, hang
Here
on.
we go.
Let's match.
Oh, excuse me. Women's flyweight, Natalia Silva. Mark, give me the name of the lady at women's flyweight that you want Natalia Silva to test her striking against next.
So it may seem like a lot, but just because of one of the names, but I'm going to say the winner of Rose Namajunas and Amanda Ribas. And it's because the rest of the division is kind of stuck. You know, you got Grasso and Valentina. Are we going to see them again? You got Blanchfield booked against Manon Fior. The winner's obviously thinking they're getting a title shot. There's like this logjam at the top. And then you kind of have this secondary level where Chookagian is fighting Macy Barber and Rose is fighting Ribas. And for me, I think the Rose Ribas winner presents the funnest option. So that's where I'm going to go.
Omar?
Yeah, personally, I went the other way, because that was where I was also in the realm of, and I was going to go with the loser of the Chookagian Macy Barber fight. I think if Macy Barber ends up fighting Natalia Silva, I think that's a banger, period. And I think if Chookagian ends up fighting Silva, I think that's a striking fight that I don't think Chookagian will have the opportunity to let be boring. I think Natalia Silva will bring the fight the entire time, and I don't think Chookagian will have much say in that. So I think either way, it's going to be a banger.
Okay, Omar, anything you want to say about Viviane Araujo and where she might go next?
Let's see here. Yeah. I want to know. Has Araujo fought Tracy Cortez yet? I know Tracy Cortez hasn't fought goddamn anybody yet, frankly.
Yeah, she has not.
Yeah. I think that's where we're going to go. I think it's time for Tracy Cortez to really start getting into those fights, start testing and working her way up that ladder, and I think Araujo is going to be the next best step.
Mark?
Same here.
Hey.
Okay. Okay, now let us jump into our lightning round. Mark and Omar give me their quickest lightning takes on these results. Here we go. First one, middleweight division once again. Khizriev versus Muradov ends after only 11 seconds into the fucking fight with an awful, one of the worst eye pokes you've ever seen, ends in a no contest. Mark, go first. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not a lot that we can say about this one. You know, eye poke 11 seconds into the fight. Clearly, Muradov's eye had swelled up and he wasn't going to be able to continue. And that was that. So hopefully he doesn't have any actual damage to that eye, and we can run this back in the not too distant future. And Khizriev's streak of inactivity continues, unless you want to count those 11 seconds as something.
Omar.
Yeah, I mean that eye poke basically was all the way up to his knuckle, like this first joint here.
His finger went in into his eyeball.
It was disgusting. Not my favorite.
Yeah, slipped down the lid. It was pretty
Ah,
awful to see.
I was one of those moments where, as a fan, you're like, all right, come on, let's go, and then you see the replay, and you're like,
Yeah.
they're not going to continue. This is over.
No, they can't. He
It's
can't.
not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was bad.
Okay. In the welterweight division, Charles Radke gets a TKO victory over Gilbert Urbina at 4:47 of round 1. Omar, go.
I don't know what went on in this fight or what happened before or what led up to Urbina looking the way that he did, but that seemed very uncharacteristic of Urbina, and I wouldn't be shocked if something happened that made his performance look the way that it did. I think he's a much better fighter than what he showed in that fight. He didn't look comfortable in any moment of that fight. And Radke, to his credit, took advantage of that and did what he had to do and just stalked him the entire fight and didn't let him move and cracked him when the opportunities presented themselves. But there was definitely something really uncharacteristic about Urbina in that fight.
Could not agree more. I had the same exact take. I don't know what it was. I thought he looked uncomfortable from the bell. I immediately thought at first exchange that he just looked off. When he fought Orion Koske, is that I think that's how they said their name. He looked like he had really taken a step. He looked so much more comfortable in there, sure of himself, and you did not see that in this fight. Radke came out walking him down, and Gilbert looked like he just didn't really know what to do about it other than try to, throw teep kicks to keep Radke off him. But eventually Radke closed him down. He was trying to find the range for that left hand, from the first exchange as well. And eventually he certainly did find it. Two huge lefts ended things, and a great win for Radke.
Okay, Molly McCann back in the win column, women's strawweight, by the way. Back in the win column with a nice round 1 armbar submission over Diana Belbita. Mark, go first.
I loved everything that I saw from Molly McCann all week long. I loved what she had to say. I loved her mindset, her focus. I loved how dedicated and safe the weight cut appeared to be for her. And I loved the way that she came out in that octagon. She came out like a girl who knew it was her night, and it was. And then she got the exclamation point of the armbar to close the show after, obviously, she got that tough loss from the armbar with Blanchfield. With Stoliarenko. But to be fair, she was supposed to win that fight if she's going to matter at 115. But she did, and she did it in style. So we'll see where she goes from here.
Omar.
Yeah, Molly McCann has such potential. The reality is I really like her striking. I think people are going to have their opinions here and there, but I think her striking is actually really fun, man. It's her footwork, I think, is one of the things that I enjoy the most about her. Her ability to move around and switch stances and kind of always keep a good fight stance below her, never really seemingly out of balance or overcommitting or overthrowing or anything like that. She's got a really good fight stance to her. As far as the performance is concerned, I thought she looked great, man. Whenever you see people cutting down, you always wonder if it's going to affect them negatively, if they're not going to have something, right? If they lose, whether it's cardio, power, or, whatever the case is. But I thought she looked great. If anything, I thought she's faster now than what she was before and didn't seemingly lose any power, any cardio. This might be the place that she needs to be to really excel and really succeed the way that she wants to in the division. So I thought she looked great. I think it's great that she ended up with a submission win, kind of rounding out her game a little bit and showing she's not just a one-trick pony with her stand-up game and her spinning back elbow. So I'm happy for Molly McCann, man. I think this is her time to really strike while the iron's hot. Like Mike would say, she's not getting any younger. So, I think it's good momentum so far for Molly McCann. Really excited to see what she does here at strawweight.
Okay, here we go. In the flyweight division, the men's flyweight division, Charles Johnson, after nearly getting slept in the first round, battles back and gets a very close UD win over Azat Maksum. Mark, go first.
In round 1, Azat Maxim looked like everything that he was supposed to be. He dropped Johnson. He out-grappled him. He looked great. But then the fight kind of changed almost on a dime. Like, I don't know if Maxim got tired or if maybe just what he was doing wasn't all that complicated and Johnson was able to get the timing down and Maxim couldn't adjust once Johnson had it. But kind of right away in round 2, Johnson was really able to start making some reads and it suddenly became a really competitive fight from that point on. And I did think Charles Johnson edged both of those last 2 rounds. And he needed that type of performance because that's the type of fight that he usually lets slip away. He's that guy. He's always in the fight, but he doesn't win it. And this time he pushed hard late, and he made sure those final 2 minutes went his way. So he won that 3rd round, and he got a big win for his career.
Omar?
Yeah, I would agree. I actually like the point about him, making that small adjustment to really come out the winner in that fight because Mark's right. Charles Johnson's always in it. He's never really getting like run over or dominate or anything like that. All of his fights are always these like close, scrappy, competitive fights that are just always edged out by the other guy. In fact, I think this is probably the first fight where he's gotten like that first round I think was the worst of his entire UFC career. He got mollywopped quite a bit in that first round. But second and third round, I thought he did come back. I mean, that momentum shift and that mentality to just come back and just be like, first round was what it was, and carry that damage with him physically and just go into that second round like nothing happened, I thought was really impressive.
That's a problem for sure.
But it was still there. It's still a close fight though, right? I mean, we're still talking about a guy who hasn't even scratched the real echelon of the division. And, he's running into some hard fights early on. So I don't know where Charles Johnson really goes. But he definitely did win this one. As close as it was, I thought it was clear that it was him for 2 and 3.
Okay, welterweight division. Themba Gorimbo defeats Pete Rodriguez by TKO in round 1. The official time, 32 seconds of round 1. Omar, go.
Fuck. I mean, that's...
Mark,
go. Yeah. It's literally it, man. I mean, there's not really much you can say about that fight, dog. I mean, there wasn't much to it. Pete came out with his bangs, and Gorimbo just cracked him really nasty with the right hand that you could hear from states away, and that was all she wrote, bro. It was a bad one. I'm actually surprised he didn't sleep him with that punch, and it just sort of dropped him, I guess, because I mean they don't get that much cleaner than that. It was a nasty punch. Good finish.
Mark.
Yeah, it was a big one from Themba. I know we saw him lose his debut to AJ Fletcher, but he seems to think that was an anomaly and an off night. He's already talking about fighting guys in the top 10. So we will see. There's still a lot more to learn about Themba Gorimbo to try to gauge how good he may actually be. And obviously he's maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but this was a hell of a step forward for him. Great finish, and we'll see what's next.
Featherweight division, Lee Jung-Yong defeats Blake Bilder by unanimous decision. A shutout on the scorecards. All 3 judges scored it 30-27 for Jung-Yong. Mark, staying with you. Go.
Lee looked really good here, man. He just outclassed Bilder. More fluid on the feet, more dangerous on the feet. He hurt Bilder a couple times. And then maybe even more impressively, Bilder couldn't bring him down at all. And he even out-wrestled Bilder as the fight went on. So really strong performance from Lee, and I'm interested to see what he has in his next one.
Omar.
I had kind of the same take. I was actually very surprised to find Lee on top in a lot of those exchanges, especially Bilder trying to engage the wrestling, and then all of a sudden Lee's got a nice little sprawl, gets an underhook, and then all of a sudden Bilder's on his back. And this happened quite a bit, and then as the rounds kind of progressed, Bilder was almost giving up top position because of some of the precarious positions he was in against the cage. So it was a really interesting fight. I did not expect Lee to be as dominant in every position as we went along, right? I expected the fight to be a little bit more back and forth, but everything that Bilder tried to throw at him, Lee had an answer for it. And that was pretty consistent throughout the fight. So I thought it was a really good performance from Lee. I'm very interested to see what a higher form of challenge in that division will be for him, because his skill is there.
Okay, women's flyweight bout that ended up being a catch weight of 129 pounds. Luana Carolina defeats Julia Stoliarenko by TKO. The official time 4:52 of the 3rd round. Omar, staying with you.
Yeah, I think this is a finish that Carolina needed. You know, her UFC career has been somewhat rocky, and this fight was, you know, not the most exciting fight all the way leading through. But when we did get to that final round and we got to that final minute, actually, most of that final round was pretty crazy, especially because Carolina, I think, was trying to up the pace, trying to make a statement, trying to finish the fight, frankly. And she found an opportunity. She kept trying to she hit her with a nice head kick, got her against the cage, got her messed up, and then she just went in for it and got her down on the ground and just kept pounding her away until the referee called it. But it was it got rough towards the end there to watch, especially because Stoliarenko was seemingly not about it anymore once she got her face pounded in. But it was a good win for Carolina for sure.
Mark.
Yeah, it was a weird one for me to evaluate. You know, Stoliarenko is generally in trouble if she's not grappling, so she didn't look great outside of the grappling moments. And then Carolina, despite now being 5-3 in the UFC, I'm never left too impressed with her skills. Maybe it's a me problem. I'm not sure, but she's well-rounded enough. She defended well here, and then she did have a great burst late to put Stoliarenko out. So good for her.
Okay, two more. In the lightweight division, Markel Medeiros defeats Lando Quinones by UD 29-28 on all three. Mark, go.
So these are the ones where I'm tagging Omar in, unfortunately. I never got to these
Omar.
last two.
So I actually thought that this fight for me was probably some of the highest level striking of the whole night. I loved this fight. The Quinones fight, I think Quinones looked really good early, and somewhere along the line, I want to say towards the end of the first round, definitely in the second and third round. What is this kid's name? Was it Morales? Medeiros.
Yeah, Markel Medeiros.
Yes. Medeiros looked great. Medeiros ended up looking really, really good. I thought they were really competitive with each other from the striking perspective, moving around a ton, very technical when it came to the feints and trying to set things up back and forth. But as the fight progressed, like I said, 2 and 3 really went to Medeiros. I mean, he was just a step ahead every time. He was landing a lot more combinations. He was countering a lot more than Quinones was. There was one combination that I love that I try to use myself where he scoops the leg off of a kick, picks that leg up, right, to kind of get the guy off balance, and then immediately throws a cross on top of it. It's a beautiful combination. I love watching it, and watching it at this high level in the pace that you see it at these pro levels, I think is fantastic. So really good win for Medeiros. Quinones has nothing to be ashamed of. It was a hell of a fight. Frankly, should have been fight of the night. I'm sure it's not getting as much love as it should, but I love that fight.
Okay, last one. Omar, again, heavyweight division, Jamal Pogue gets it done by UD over Thomas Peterson.
Yeah, I have the opposite feelings of this fight as from the former. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Heavyweight fights that don't have a lot of technique behind them just don't do it for me. These guys, you know, I will give them credit that they seem to have a decent pace throughout three rounds. Most heavyweights generally don't. But it was a close fight. Nothing too crazy. Nothing that I would really take away from a technique standpoint. They went in there to bang. You know, they exchanged a little bit every now and again throughout the course of those 3 rounds. At the end of the day, I thought that Pogues had 2 rounds in the bag by the time they went into the third. Fatigue was obviously setting in long before the third round anyway, but by the third round, it was really bad. And, you know, Peterson was able to work his way into that third round and win that third round, but frankly, it was too late by that point. So good win for Pogues. Those kind of heavyweight fights, though, are just not my bag of tea.
Okay, and that does it for our recap of UFC Fight Night Dolidze versus Imavov. Mark,